The couple had lived in the small apartment for 3 years. It was not fancy, but it was clean, quiet, and close to their jobs. Marcus worked long hours at a delivery company. His wife, Elena, worked part-time at a daycare while taking care of their young son. They were polite people who kept to themselves. They paid rent on time every single month. They never caused trouble. Their neighbors often saw them helping others. Marcus fixed broken doors in the hallway. Elena watched children for free when parents were late from work. They believed that if you treated people kindly, life would return that kindness one day. One afternoon, everything changed. Marcus had just returned home from work when he noticed a white paper taped to their door. At first, he thought it was a notice about repairs. When he read it closely, his hands began to shake. It was an eviction notice. It said they had to leave the apartment in 10 days. Elena came out of the kitchen and saw Marcus standing still. She knew something was wrong. When she read the paper, her heart dropped. The notice claimed they had broken rules and disturbed other tenants. None of it was true. They were confused. They had never received a warning. No one had complained to them. Marcus decided to speak to the landlord right away. The landlord's office was on the ground floor. When Marcus knocked, the landlord opened the door with a cold expression. Marcus tried to stay calm. He explained that there must be a mistake. The landlord did not invite him inside. He did not even look at the documents Marcus brought. "There's nothing to discuss," the landlord said. "You need to leave by the date on the notice." Elena stepped forward and asked what rule they had broken. The landlord sighed as if he was tired of talking. He said the building needed better tenants and claimed complaints had been made. When Marcus asked for proof, the landlord turned away and closed the door. That night, the apartment felt different. The walls felt smaller. The air felt heavy. Their son slept peacefully, unaware of what was happening. Marcus and Elena sat quietly at the table, thinking about their future. They did not have savings for a new place. Rent everywhere else was higher. The thought of being without a home scared them. Over the next few days, they tried everything. They spoke to neighbors, but no one admitted to making complaints. Some neighbors looked uncomfortable. Others avoided eye contact. It felt like fear had filled the building. Marcus called housing offices and help centers. Most said it would take weeks to get help. The eviction date was getting closer. One evening, Elena found an old card in a drawer. It was from a legal aid group she had once called years ago for advice. She decided to call again, even though she did not expect much. To her surprise, someone answered quickly. Elena explained the situation in simple words. The person on the phone listened carefully and asked questions. After a long pause, the voice said, "This doesn't sound right. You should not be removed without proper steps." The next day, Marcus and Elena met with a lawyer at a small office downtown. The lawyer was calm and respectful. He reviewed the eviction notice and shook his head slowly. He explained that the landlord had skipped important legal steps. The couple still had rights. For the first time in days, Marcus felt a small sense of hope. The lawyer agreed to file a case in court. He warned them that it would not be easy. Court could be stressful. The landlord would likely fight back. Still, Marcus and Elena agreed. They did not want to lose their home without trying. As the court date approached, the landlord's behavior changed. He stopped making eye contact when he saw them. He sent messages reminding them to move out. His tone was confident, almost proud. Marcus tried to focus on work, but his mind was always racing. Elena stayed strong for their son, smiling even when she felt like crying. They packed some boxes, unsure of what would happen next. On the morning of the court day, they dressed neatly and arrived early. The courtroom felt large and serious. Marcus held Elena's hand tightly. They whispered words of encouragement to each other. Across the room, the landlord sat comfortably talking and smiling. He looked relaxed, as if the outcome was already decided. Marcus noticed the judge had not entered yet. He wondered what kind of person the judge would be, fair or rushed, kind or distant. None of them knew that this day would change everything, and that the truth was about to stand in the open, where no one could ignore it anymore. The courtroom felt colder than Marcus expected. The benches were hard, and the lights were bright. Marcus and Elena sat quietly in the second row, holding hands. They spoke very little. Every sound felt loud in the room. Papers shuffled, shoes tapped on the floor. A clock ticked slowly on the wall. Their lawyer sat beside them. He reminded them to stay calm and answer only when asked. Marcus nodded, but his heart was beating fast. Elena took a deep breath and looked straight ahead. She wanted to look strong, even though fear sat heavy inside her chest. The landlord entered the courtroom a few minutes later. He wore a neat suit and carried a folder under his arm. He looked around the room with confidence. When he saw Marcus and Elena, his face stayed blank. He chose a seat closer to the front. Soon after, the judge entered. Everyone stood. The judge took a seat and looked over the room with calm eyes. The judge's voice was steady as the session began. The landlord spoke first. He explained his side clearly and without emotion. He said the couple had caused problems. He claimed other tenants felt uncomfortable. He said the eviction was legal and necessary. His voice did not shake. He sounded prepared. Marcus felt anger rise inside him, but he stayed quiet. When it was the couple's turn, their lawyer spoke. He explained that the eviction notice did not follow the proper steps. He pointed out missing warnings and unclear claims. He said there was no proof of any complaints. The judge listened closely and took notes. Then the judge asked Marcus to speak. Marcus stood up slowly. His hands felt weak, but his voice was steady. He explained how long they had lived in the apartment. He spoke about paying rent on time and helping neighbors. He explained how the eviction notice appeared without warning. He did not raise his voice. He spoke with respect. Elena was asked to speak next. She described how the eviction affected their family. She spoke about their child and the fear of losing their home. Her voice shook for a moment, but she continued. The courtroom stayed quiet as she spoke. The judge asked the landlord a few questions. At first, the landlord answered quickly, but then the questions became more detailed. The judge asked for records of complaints. The landlord paused. He said the complaints were verbal. The judge asked who made them. The landlord hesitated again. Marcus noticed the landlord's confidence begin to fade. The judge then asked for written warnings or notices before the eviction. The landlord looked through his folder. He could not find any. He said the situation required quick action. The judge raised an eyebrow and wrote something down. A short break was called. Marcus and Elena stepped outside the courtroom. The hallway was quiet. Elena leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Marcus placed his hand on her shoulder. They did not know what would happen, but they felt heard for the first time. When court resumed, the judge spoke slowly and clearly. The judge explained that housing laws exist to protect both tenants and landlords. Rules must be followed by everyone. No one is above the law. The judge said more time was needed to review the case fully. The eviction would be paused until a final decision was made. The landlord was ordered not to disturb the couple or take further action. Marcus felt a wave of relief. It was not a final win, but it was hope. The landlord did not look pleased. He nodded stiffly and gathered his papers. He avoided looking at Marcus and Elena as he left the room. Outside the courthouse, the air felt lighter. Elena smiled for the first time in days. Marcus let out a breath he did not realize he was holding. Their lawyer reminded them the case was not over, but today mattered. As they walked away from the building, Marcus thought about how close they had come to losing everything. He also thought about how speaking calmly and standing firm had made a difference. Neither of them knew yet that the next hearing would bring a moment no one expected. A moment that would turn the courtroom silent and change the landlord's confidence into fear. For now, they walked forward together, holding on to the small but powerful feeling that justice was slowly waking up. The days after the first court hearing felt long and heavy. Marcus and Elena returned to their apartment, but the fear did not leave. Even though the eviction was paused, they knew the case was not finished. Every knock on the door made their hearts race. Every letter in the mail brought worry. The landlord stopped speaking to them completely. When he passed them in the hallway, he looked through them as if they were not there. The building felt colder, not because of the weather, but because of the silence. Neighbors who once smiled now kept their distance. It hurt, but Marcus and Elena stayed focused on their family. Their lawyer called them a week later. He said the judge had set a final hearing date. This hearing would decide everything. The lawyer asked them to bring all rent records, messages, and any proof of good behavior. Marcus spent hours organizing papers. Elena printed old emails and notes they wanted to be ready. At night, Marcus lay awake thinking. He wondered why the landlord wanted them gone so badly. They had done nothing wrong. Elena tried to stay positive, but sometimes she cried quietly in the bathroom so their son would not see. On the day of the final hearing, the courthouse looked the same, but the feeling was different. The air felt tense. Marcus held a folder tightly as they walked inside. Elena squeezed his hand. They both prayed silently for fairness. Inside the courtroom, the landlord arrived early. He looked confident again. He spoke loudly with his own lawyer and laughed once. Marcus noticed it, but he stayed calm. He had learned that quiet strength mattered more than loud confidence. The judge entered, and everyone stood. The judge greeted the room and went straight to business. The case resumed quickly. The landlord's lawyer spoke first this time. He repeated the claims about complaints and discomfort. He tried to make the situation sound serious. He said the landlord had the right to choose tenants. When it was their turn, Marcus and Elena's lawyer responded carefully. He presented rent receipts showing years of on-time payments. He showed messages where the landlord had praised Marcus for helping with repairs. He pointed out that there were no written complaints and no warnings. The judge asked the landlord to explain the praise messages. The landlord said they were old and no longer mattered. The judge asked why there was no record of problems after those messages. The landlord's face tightened. Then something unexpected happened. The judge looked down at the paperwork again and paused. The room grew quiet. The judge then looked up and asked Elena a simple question. "Can you please confirm your full name?" Elena answered clearly. The judge then asked Marcus for his full name as well. Marcus replied, confused but calm. The judge's expression changed slightly. It was not emotion but recognition. The judge leaned back and looked at them carefully. There was a long pause. The landlord shifted in his seat. He glanced at his lawyer, then back at the judge. Sweat appeared on his forehead. The judge spoke slowly. The voice remained professional but firm. The judge explained that there was a personal connection, one that did not affect fairness, but required honesty. The judge looked at the courtroom and said, "For the record, these two individuals are my parents." The room fell completely silent. Marcus felt his breath stop. Elena's eyes widened. Neither of them had known. They had not even recognized the judge. Years ago, their child had changed their last name for personal reasons. Life had moved fast and paths had separated in quiet ways. The landlord's face lost all color. His confident posture collapsed. His lawyer whispered something urgently, but the landlord did not respond. The judge continued, explaining that despite the connection, the case would be judged strictly by law. Fairness mattered above all else. The judge said the evidence had already spoken clearly. The landlord tried to speak, but his voice shook. The judge raised a hand and asked him to stop. The judge stated that the eviction was unlawful and based on unsupported claims. The judge ordered the eviction dismissed fully. The landlord was warned about future conduct and reminded of legal responsibilities. Marcus and Elena sat frozen. Tears filled Elena's eyes. Marcus felt a mix of shock, relief, and disbelief. The judge ended the session calmly and exited the room. As people slowly stood up, whispers filled the air. The landlord gathered his things with shaking hands and left without a word. Marcus and Elena remained seated for a moment, holding hands tightly. Life had tested them deeply, but truth had spoken in the end, and they knew this moment would stay with them forever. The courtroom slowly emptied, but Marcus and Elena stayed seated for a long moment. Their hands were still locked together. Neither of them spoke. Their minds were trying to understand what had just happened. The fear they had carried for weeks began to lift, little by little. Outside the courthouse, the sunlight felt warm. Elena took a deep breath, as if she was breathing freely for the first time in a long while. Marcus looked up at the sky and felt a quiet sense of peace. They had walked into court hoping only to be heard. They walked out with justice. Their lawyer met them near the steps. He smiled and congratulated them. He explained that the case was officially closed. The eviction could not move forward. Their home was safe. Marcus thanked him again and again. Elena could not stop smiling through her tears. They returned home that evening together. The apartment no longer felt small. It felt safe again. Their son ran to them laughing, unaware of how close they had come to losing everything. Elena hugged him tightly. Marcus watched them and felt proud of his family. That night, Marcus and Elena talked quietly after their son fell asleep. They spoke about the judge, about the surprise, and about how life can turn in ways no one expects. Elena said she felt thankful that the truth came out without anger. Marcus agreed they had stayed calm and it had mattered. The next few days brought more changes. Word about the case spread quickly in the building. Neighbors who once avoided them now smiled again. Some apologized for staying silent. One neighbor brought over food. Another offered to help if they needed anything. Marcus accepted the kindness, but he did not hold anger toward anyone. He understood that fear makes people quiet. The landlord, however, kept his distance. He did not speak to Marcus or Elena. A few weeks later, a notice appeared in the building office. It announced that a management company would now handle tenant matters. The landlord would no longer be directly involved. Marcus read the notice twice. He felt relief, not pride. He did not want revenge. He only wanted fairness. Soon the story reached beyond the building. A local community group asked if Marcus and Elena would share their experience. At first, they hesitated. They were private people. But then they thought about other families who might face the same fear. They agreed to speak, but only to help others understand their rights. At a small community meeting, Marcus told their story in simple words. He talked about paying rent, following rules, and still being pushed out without reason. Elena spoke about the fear of losing a home and protecting a child. People listened closely. Some nodded, some wiped away tears. They made it clear they were not sharing the story to shame anyone. They shared it to show that calm voices and the law can work together. After the meeting, several people thanked them. One older woman said she felt braver because of their story. A young man said he would help his parents understand their rights better. Marcus and Elena felt that speaking out had meaning at home. Life slowly returned to normal. Marcus focused on work again. Elena continued caring for children at the daycare. Their son played freely, filling the apartment with laughter. One evening, Marcus received a letter in the mail. It was from the court. It confirmed the final decision in writing. Marcus placed the letter in a folder and stored it safely. It was more than paper. It was proof that fairness still existed. Elena framed a simple photo of their family and placed it on the living room shelf. She said it reminded her of what truly mattered. Not fear, not stress, but family and honesty. Sometimes Marcus thought about the landlord. He wondered if the man had learned anything. He hoped so. He believed that lessons do not always need punishment. Sometimes they need reflection. As weeks passed, the fear that once followed them faded away. They slept better. They laughed more. Their home felt like a home again. Marcus and Elena knew their story was not just about them. It was about standing calmly when life feels unfair. It was about trusting that truth, when spoken clearly, has power. And they knew the journey was not over yet. because what they chose to do next would inspire others in ways they could never imagine. Life slowly settled into a steady rhythm again for Marcus and Alina, but the experience had changed them in quiet ways. They still woke up early, still worked long hours, and still cared for their son with the same love. Yet now there was a deeper sense of purpose in their daily lives. What they had faced had opened their eyes to how fragile a home could be, and how important it was to protect it. One afternoon, Elena received a call from a local housing support group. Someone from the community meeting had shared their story, and the group wanted to speak with them. They asked if Marcus and Alina would be willing to help other families understand their rights as tenants. Alina listened carefully and then discussed it with Marcus that evening. Marcus was quiet for a long time. He had never seen himself as a leader or speaker. He was a simple man who believed in hard work and respect. But he also remembered how lost they had felt at the beginning, not knowing where to turn. After thinking about it, he agreed. If their experience could help even one family, it would be worth it. They began volunteering on weekends. Sometimes they helped answer phones. Other times they listened to people's stories. Many families shared fears that sounded familiar. Notices placed on doors, sudden demands to leave, confusion and stress. Marcus and Alina did not give legal advice, but they shared their experience and encouraged people to seek proper help. Through this work, they met many different people. Some were young couples, some were elderly, some were single parents. All of them wanted the same thing: safety and stability. Elena often left these meetings feeling emotional but also hopeful. She saw strength in people who refused to give up. At the same time, changes continued in their building. The new management company introduced clear rules and fair communication. Maintenance requests were handled properly. Notices were given with respect. The atmosphere improved. Neighbors spoke more openly with each other. Trust slowly returned. One evening, a neighbor knocked on their door. He apologized for not speaking up earlier. He admitted he had been afraid of causing trouble. Marcus thanked him for his honesty. He said fear makes people silent, but courage helps everyone. The two men shook hands, and something simple but important was healed. Meanwhile, the landlord stayed out of sight. Rumors spread that he had faced warnings for his actions. Marcus did not follow the details. He did not feel satisfaction in someone else's trouble. He felt satisfaction in knowing the system had worked as it should. At home, Alina noticed changes in herself. She was more confident when speaking. She no longer doubted her voice. When parents at the daycare talked about housing problems, Alina listened carefully and shared helpful contacts. She had become someone others trusted. Their son, still young, sensed the calm in the home. He laughed more and slept better. Marcus and Alina often watched him play and felt grateful. They knew how close they had come to losing that peace. One night, Marcus and Elena sat together on the couch after their son fell asleep. They talked about the judge again, about family connections and paths that separate and return in unexpected ways. Alina said she believed the moment happened for a reason. Marcus agreed. He believed life had tested them and then shown them truth. They decided to save a little money each month, no matter how small the amount. They wanted to build security for the future. The experience had taught them that preparation mattered. As months passed, their story continued to spread quietly. A short article appeared in a local newsletter. It focused on fairness, not drama. It spoke about calm strength and the importance of following the law. Marcus and Elena read it together and smiled. The story felt honest. They were invited to speak at one more small event. This time, Marcus spoke more than Elena. His voice was steady. He said that respect goes both ways, and that everyone deserves to be treated fairly. People listened closely. When they returned home that night, Marcus felt tired but peaceful. He realized something important. The hardest moment of their lives had turned into a source of strength. They had not planned this path. They had not asked for attention. But by staying calm and honest, they had become an example. And as they closed their door that night, Marcus knew their journey was leading towards something even greater than they had imagined. As time moved forward, Marcus and Elena felt a quiet shift inside themselves. They were no longer just reacting to what had happened. They were choosing what came next. The fear that once guided their steps had turned into calm confidence. Marcus noticed the change at work first. He spoke more clearly during meetings. He was no longer afraid to ask questions or share ideas. His manager noticed this and gave him more responsibility. Marcus did not chase praise, but he felt proud that his voice mattered. Elena felt the change in smaller moments. When she walked into a room, she no longer lowered her eyes. She stood straight. She listened carefully and spoke when it was needed. Parents at the daycare trusted her deeply. Some asked her for advice about life, not just childcare. One afternoon, a young couple came to the housing support group looking scared and lost. They had received a notice that felt sudden and unfair. Elena sat with them patiently. She did not rush. She listened to every word. Then she shared her story in simple terms. She explained that fear is natural, but silence can be dangerous. Marcus helped the couple organize their papers. He showed them how small details can matter. He reminded them to stay calm and respectful. The couple left feeling stronger than when they arrived. After they left, Elena looked at Marcus and smiled. She said, We used to be the ones asking for help. Marcus nodded. Life had turned their pain into purpose. At home, they continued building small habits that brought peace. They ate dinner together every night. They talked about their day. They laughed more often. Their son grew curious and joyful. He asked many questions about fairness and kindness. Marcus and Alina answered him honestly, using words he could understand. One evening, their son asked why they helped strangers. Marcus thought for a moment and said, "Because someone helped us when we needed it." The child nodded as if that answer made perfect sense. Weeks later, Marcus received an email from the housing support group. They wanted to create a short guide for families, written in simple language. They asked if Marcus and Alina would help review it. Marcus felt nervous, but Alina encouraged him. They worked on the guide together, making sure the words were clear and kind. When the guide was shared, many people thanked them. Some said it helped them understand their rights for the first time. Marcus felt something he had never felt before. Not pride, but quiet fulfillment. The building they lived in continued to improve. Repairs were done on time. Notices were clear and respectful. Neighbors spoke openly in the hallway. Trust slowly replaced fear. Marcus and Alina realized how much environment matters. A safe home creates calm hearts. One day, Marcus saw the former landlord outside the building speaking with someone. The man looked older, quieter. For a brief moment their eyes met. The landlord looked away. Marcus did not feel anger. He felt closure. That night Marcus and Alina talked about forgiveness. Alina said forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means choosing peace. Marcus agreed. Holding anger would only bring the past back into their home. They decided to focus on the future. They opened a small savings account labeled Home. It was not for moving right away. It was for security, for choice. Each deposit felt like planting a seed. As months passed, Marcus and Alina were invited less often to speak. Life grew quiet again, but this time it was a good quiet. They had learned when to step forward and when to rest. One evening, they received a handwritten letter from an older woman they had met at a community event. The letter said their story gave her courage to speak up for herself. Alina read the letter twice and held it close. Marcus placed it carefully with their court papers. These were reminders of strength. Before going to sleep that night, Marcus stood by the window and looked out at the city lights. He thought about how one unfair moment had almost taken everything, and how staying calm had changed everything. Alina joined him and rested her head on his shoulder. They did not need words. They both knew the final chapter of their journey was coming. Not with noise or drama, but with reflection, hope, and a lesson that would stay with them forever. The years that followed passed quietly, but the lesson Marcus and Alina had learned never faded. Life did not suddenly become perfect, but it became steady. Their home remained a place of warmth, honesty, and peace. The fear that once lived in their hearts no longer had power over them. Marcus continued to grow at work. His manager trusted him with more tasks, and his calm nature made others feel safe. He was known as someone who listened first and spoke with care. Alina continued her work at the daycare, where parents often thanked her for her patience and kindness. She treated every child as if they were her own. Their son grew older and more curious about the world. He asked many questions about fairness, rules, and why people sometimes treat others poorly. Marcus and Alina answered with honesty, using simple words. They taught him that respect is a choice, and silence is not always the answer. One evening, as they sat together at the dinner table, their son asked about the courthouse. He remembered being young and seeing his parents worried. Alina looked at Marcus, and Marcus nodded. They decided it was time to tell him the full story. Marcus spoke slowly, explaining how they almost lost their home. Alina explained how staying calm helped them be heard. They told him that speaking the truth does not always bring quick results, but it brings the right ones. Their son listened closely. When they finished, he smiled and said he was proud of them. That moment meant more to Marcus and Alina than any public praise. Later that year, the housing support group invited them to a small celebration. It was not large or formal. It was simply a gathering of people who had helped one another. Marcus and Alina attended quietly. They listened more than they spoke. During the event, a speaker talked about fairness and community. He said real change often comes from ordinary people who choose calm strength instead of anger. Marcus and Alina felt those words deeply. They did not see themselves as heroes. They saw themselves as parents who refused to give up. When they returned home that night, Alina placed a small box on the shelf. Inside were letters, papers, and notes from people they had helped. She said it was a reminder of where they had been and why kindness mattered. Marcus agreed. As time passed, the building they lived in became known for fairness and respect. New families moved in and felt welcomed. The past slowly turned into memory, not pain. One afternoon, Marcus received a message from a former neighbor who had moved away. The message said, "Your strength changed more than you know." Marcus read it twice and smiled. He showed it to Alina and they shared a quiet moment together. Years later, on a peaceful weekend, Marcus and Alina sat on their balcony watching the sun set. Their son, now older, played nearby. Alina rested her head on Marcus's shoulder, just as she had done years before. Marcus thought about the eviction notice on the door, the fear, the silence, the courtroom, and the moment truth stood tall without shouting, he realized something important. Justice does not always come with noise. Sometimes it comes with patience. Elena said softly that she was grateful for the hard days. They had taught them who they were. Marcus agreed. Without that challenge, they might never have found their voice. As the sky darkened, Marcus held Elena's hand. They did not know what the future would bring, but they were no longer afraid. They had learned that calm strength, honesty, and respect could carry them through anything. Their story was never about winning in court. It was about standing firm without anger, about choosing dignity over fear, and about teaching the next generation that fairness is worth protecting. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by peace they had earned, Marcus and Elena knew their journey had come full circle.